Pictured here is a saltwater crocodile about 1,200 miles away from its native range, and pictured here is a potential saltwater crocodile farther south in its Australian range than what's typical. While these are interesting cases, this is not a largely abnormal sighting if we consider historical reports. The truth is, the species in the past once lived and traveled to places well outside of where it lives today, like Japan. In fact, evidence may point to them once swimming along the African coast. Saltwater crocodiles, the largest of all the living reptiles, also have one of the largest ranges of the living crocodilian species. Part of the reason it has such an expansive range is because it frequently ventures out into the open ocean. The highly successful salt glands on the tongue of saltwater crocodiles, which allow them to tolerate salt water, lets the species swim out in the ocean for extensive periods of time. The range of the saltwater crocodile today is from Southeast Asia to northern Australia, and while the current range is extensive, historically it was larger. In the past, the northern extent of the saltwater crocodile's range seemed to be in China, being as far north as Fuzhou. The earliest description of the species in China was during the Wu Dynasty, with the Chinese at the time referring to the crocodiles as like a fish with 4 limbs. These descriptions also stated the crocodiles could obtain lengths of 20 to 30 feet and could swallow a man whole. However, the saltwater crocodile population in China would continue to decline over time. Populations appear to have been drastically reduced by the end of the 13th century due to large-scale human migration southward, but some may have persisted into the 18th or early 19th centuries. As shown by this map, the orange highlights the areas where saltwater crocodiles are now extinct, with the main reasons these populations diminished being tied to humans. However, this still shows just how expansive the species can be, which leads to my next point of vagrant crocodiles. A vagrant animal is one that has been found outside of its native range due to reasons such as extensive travel, severe weather, or a navigation error. Several species have examples of vagrant individuals, and the saltwater crocodile is no exception. One of the more interesting countries to have vagrant crocodiles sighted is Japan. Sightings of salties here began in 1800, when a crocodile was caught in Amami Oshima with accompanying artwork of the capture in the animal itself. The next reported sighting was a supposed attack in 1874. Quote, the Koga Inlet of eastern Mie Prefecture was inhabited by an alligator whose entire body was covered with seaweed and oysters. The creature was known to cause ships to overturn and then attack the people thrown into the sea. One day, a fire broke out on board a ship anchored offshore, and when the crew jumped into the sea to escape the fire, they were all swallowed by the monster. It could not be confirmed, according to the article, that the monster was really an alligator. Another crocodile was caught in a fishing net in Toyama Bay in 1932, with a reported length of 0.6 meters. In 1974, another small salty was also captured in Sodochicho, Kagoshima. The largest of these vagrant crocodiles in Japan appears to be the carcass of a 3-meter one found in Koajiro Bay of Miura City. Supposedly the identity of the carcass was confirmed by DNA testing, but I could not find any images of this crocodile. Outside of Japan, there are some notable vagrant saltwater crocs in the Pacific that must be mentioned. In 1774, a crocodile was captured at Iwo Jima and presented to the head of the Satsuma clan. As brought up in one of my previous videos, a supposed 30-footer was claimed to be killed in Saipan by an American soldier in the 1940s during World War II. While this giant's length was not confirmed, one of the largest of these ocean-goers was a 12-footer caught in Pompeii in 1971. It was said to have been taking domestic pigs from the island for roughly 6 months till its capture. It was eventually caught in a trap and shot dead. Quote, examination of its stomach contents encountered a piece of mangrove wood, several identified crabs, an identified eel, and fragments of a small green turtle. In 2005, a saltwater crocodile was found in Alinga Laplap, but was unfortunately killed by the locals. Although all these vagrant crocodiles are interesting cases and many more exist beyond what was stated, the most interesting may provide evidence of the species once visiting Africa. The idea of African saltwater crocodiles is based largely on the discovery of crocodiles found in Seychelles, an archipelago near East Africa. When Western explorers and settlers began visiting the archipelago, they observed several crocodiles living in the area, not stragglers like what's been mentioned previously, an actual population. For the longest time, given the Seychelles' somewhat closer distance to Africa, it was assumed they were Nile crocodiles. By the early 19th century, this population would unfortunately be killed off, and all that remained were skeletons. In 1994, a surprising discovery was made about these crocodiles. Two researchers by the name of Gerlach and Canning decided to examine these crocs and determine what species they belonged to. The skulls of the Seychelles crocs were compared to Nile crocodiles, mugger crocodiles, saltwater crocodiles, and even the extinct voi. After comparing the skulls, it was stated these animals were clearly saltwater crocodiles. The question that naturally comes to mind after this discovery is, where did these salties come from? Well, the closest area to Seychelles that are part of the native range of the species would either be southern India or Sri Lanka. This would mean the small population was over 1,700 miles away from the typical range for this species. Considering all the previous examples I have given throughout the video, and there being enough crocodiles traveling 1,700 miles across the ocean to establish a population, I think it is definitely within the realm of possibility a few saltwater crocodiles could have ended up on the shores of East Africa, potentially meaning a Nile crocodile could have met, fought, or for all we know, mated with a vagrant salty. Now, this isn't confirmed by any means, and there haven't been reports of the species being actually seen along the coast of East Africa, but given all the information, it's not an out-of-this-world theory. With all the things I stated throughout the video, the recent news of a possible saltwater crocodile in South Queensland isn't that shocking. In fact, it's happened before. In 1905, a 12-foot saltwater crocodile was found in the Logan River, and its dead body put on display for the residents. The amount of worry people have about saltwater crocodiles expanding their range to South Queensland comes from the same reasoning as to why some residents are worried about American crocodiles expanding in Florida. You have generations of people who have forgotten or never learned about where crocodiles used to be. And when you have a few pop up somewhere new, they think this means the population has become out of control and they're venturing into new places. This would be a different conversation if a large breeding population were to appear in these locations, but that is not what's happening. If a crocodile is spotted in Noosa, this is just a vagrant animal, just like what's been spotted before. Hopefully, through education, we can start to understand and not fear when a vagrant crocodile does pop up. So many of you know about the current study I am working on about 20-foot plus crocodilians. Heck, the topic is pretty much the main thing I'm known for on here, but I need your help. I am finding some really interesting information pertaining to certain head measurements for at least a saltwater crocodile. However, I am currently working with a small sample size. What I am looking for are detailed measurements from skulls or heads of saltwater crocodiles that came from animals at least 10 feet or 3 meters long. I will have my email and Instagram in the description, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you all for watching. To learn more about the animals you just saw, buy the second edition of What We Get Wrong About Crocodilians. It examines claims of giant crocodiles, a World War II massacre, regenerating tails, alligators in the sewers, their record land speeds, and more. The book examines claims many, including experts, get wrong about these animals, and the second edition includes updated information, pictures, and more. Buy What We Get Wrong About Crocodilians, the second edition, in physical or digital formats. Link in bio, comments, or description to buy.